Switzerland is one of the smallest countries in Europe, yet invading it may be one of the hardest military operations ever attempted. Inside its mountains sit over 21,000 fortified positions, more than 3,000 bridges and roads wired for demolition, and fighter jets hidden in caverns carved from solid rock. All of it built around a single geographic reality that changes everything once you look past the map. A standard flat political map of Europe presents Switzerland as a tiny landlocked speck, completely surrounded by giant neighbors. On paper, the state appears highly vulnerable, a compact enclave easily bypassed, encircled, and overwhelmed within days. This two-dimensional perspective creates a false impression of weakness, inviting the assumption that a modern army could sweep through it with ease. But borders on a page are a dangerous illusion that completely ignores the reality of physical space. A political map suggests a quick, decisive victory. The actual ground demands a grueling, almost impossible campaign. The southern half of this ground belongs to the Alps, a massive wall of granite rising up to 4,000 meters. This mountain range serves as the core of Swiss military strategy. Steep, jagged rock faces immediately rule out massive tank maneuvers and fast-moving armored divisions. High altitudes choke supply lines, forcing logistics off wide plains and onto unstable climbing paths. Here, nature itself fights for the defender before a single bullet is fired. Severe alpine weather, sudden rockfalls, and unpredictable winter avalanches create a hostile environment where heavy equipment becomes a liability. An invading army cannot simply drive through this terrain. They must climb it, clear it, and survive it. In mountain warfare, every vertical meter gained requires immense energy and time. This grueling geography strips away the attacker's speed, turning a rapid blitzkrieg into a slow, exhausting crawl. In military planning, losing momentum is fatal because every hour of delay gives the defending forces more time to prepare. An invader hoping to cross this mountain barrier cannot choose their own path. Swiss geography compresses transit into a tiny number of highly predictable north-south corridors. Only 3 primary Alpine passes carry the strategic burden of heavy movement across the range. The Gotthard Pass sits at an elevation of 1,100 meters, serving as a narrow funnel for any force attempting to move from the south. Further west, the Simplon Pass climbs to 1,998 meters, while the high-altitude St. Gotthard Pass reaches 2,100 meters. These are not wide, open highways. They are tight, twisting tracks squeezed between sheer rock walls. Because high-altitude roads and rail lines are forced into these exact, geography-defined paths, an attacking force has zero room to maneuver. An army must advance in a single, exposed line, making their movements entirely predictable. By funneling all traffic into a handful of predictable choke points, Switzerland can ignore hundreds of miles of border and focus its defensive firepower on these exact high-altitude bottlenecks. Here, a small defending force can stop an entire army simply because there is nowhere else for the enemy to go. Swiss military engineers carve defenses directly into the living granite, transforming the natural Alpine barrier into a man-made second battlefield hidden inside the terrain itself. By 1944, they had completed 21,000 fortified works within a secure defensive zone known as the Alpine Triangle. This subterranean system relied on 3 massive anchor points: Fortress St. Maurice to the west, Fortress Sargans to the east, and the Gotthard Massif at the center. Inside these sheer rock faces, engineers excavated extensive networks of underground artillery galleries and reinforced concrete shelters designed to withstand relentless bombardment. Every heavy gun and troop bunker was masked by elaborate camouflage, shaped to blend with the natural stone. An invading force looking up at a silent cliffside would face invisible positions capable of striking with devastating fire. This subterranean depth allowed defenders to live, move, and fight within the mountain armor, surviving aerial attacks while maintaining absolute control over the passes below. If an invading army managed to reach the Alpine corridors, they would find the path itself turned against them. Swiss pioneer engineers integrated systematic destruction directly into the country's infrastructure. Over 3,000 demolition points were mapped across the nation, rigging key roads, rail lines, and mountain tunnels with hidden explosive chambers. These were not desperate last-minute measures. Bridges were engineered from the drawing board with pre-drilled boreholes designed to hold heavy charges of TNT. The objective was to collapse the concrete instantly under an invader's feet. By turning modern highways into deep chasms and blocking tunnels with hundreds of tons of collapsed granite, the Swiss targeted enemy logistics. Any attacking force would lose its forward momentum, forced to halt and attempt slow exposed repairs under the constant sightlines of hidden Alpine artillery. The strategy of denial does not stop at the valley floor. To shield its air force from first strike destruction, Switzerland carved massive aircraft caverns directly into the Alpine rock. Active bases like Meiringen and Alpnach house these subterranean hangars, known as Flugzeug cavern. Inside the granite cliffs, engineers excavated entire command complexes where fighter jets, including Fa-18 Hornets of Fliegerstaffel 8, are stored, armed, and maintained in nuclear-hardened safety. At Meiringen, a 120 million Swiss franc modernization transformed the mountain interior into a fully integrated operations hub. Heavy armored doors slide open, allowing jets to taxi straight out of the rock and directly onto the active runway. By sheltering their primary air assets beneath the mountains rather than on exposed tarmacs, Swiss planners neutralized the traditional opening phase of modern warfare, the decisive preemptive airstrike. An invader's bombs would merely scar the outer granite, while the defensive fleet remains entirely intact, fueled, and ready to contest the airspace. On July 25, 1940, General Henri Guisan gathered 650 senior officers at the historic Ruetli Meadow. With Europe collapsing, Guisan issued a grim warning. The danger had never been greater. He formalized a radical strategy called the National Redoubt. This doctrine accepted a brutal trade-off, sacrificing the lowlands, where most Swiss citizens lived, to hold the Alpine core. The mountains became the ultimate fortress. To staff this massive defensive system, Switzerland did not rely on a large standing army, but on a citizen militia model. Every able-bodied man was trained, armed, and ready to mobilize at a moment's notice. At its peak, this citizen system swelled the country's wartime strength to about 850,000 soldiers. Behind the physical concrete and carved granite was a unified national plan, turning the entire population into a permanent force of resistance. Modern precision weapons, high-altitude drones, and elite special forces can strike static positions, but they cannot erase the vertical reality of the Alps. Freezing temperatures and mountain weather degrade advanced electronics, while reinforced granite shelters neutralize satellite-guided bunker busters. An invader still faces the grueling logistical bottleneck of moving physical armor through narrow valleys. The Swiss constantly stress-tested these vulnerabilities. In a 1973 war game simulating a massive invasion, planners identified a weak point along the northern flank of the Malines Gorge Line. The military immediately adapted, adding mobile anti-tank units and redundant communication links. By constantly refining the system, Switzerland ensured that any technological advance by an attacker is met with an even tougher, more resilient layer of Alpine resistance. In an era of high-tech warfare, Switzerland proves raw power cannot conquer absolute preparation. True deterrence lives not in massive armies, but in the unyielding fusion of geography and national resolve. The ALPS remain an unbroken promise of sovereignty. Share your thoughts in the comments below.